Coming to you from Scotts Hollow Mercantile in lovely Hermitage, Tennessee, it's time for We Need to Talk with your host, the Colonel himself, Mr. Paul Odom, and yours truly, Papa John. Hey, stop what you're doing. Come sit down. We need to talk.
Oh, baby, it's true. It's you. We need to talk.
Hey, good morning, Paul.
Good morning. How are you this morning?
Good to see you again. We need to talk.
Yeah, we need to talk. we got...
People wanting to hear more about gardening and about health and nutrition, and somebody was asking what supplements, if you take supplements, or how have you gotten as good a shape as you're in at 87? You're very healthy. You take supplements or vitamins?
I used to take a lot of supplements. I'd take 10 or 15, but I got back to where I'm not hardly taking any, but I need some you need. You know what I mean? And I try to eat a lot of fruit and nuts and fresh, like cabbage and carrots. And of course, I eat a lot of cooked food too, but we don't need enough raw food.
Yeah, you garden too. I know that. You were talking in one of our last episodes about all the stuff you all grew in your garden. How long have you been yourself gardening?
Well, I gardened, growing up. Of course, my dad had a farm, and from the earliest I remember gathering corn, and at 5 years old, and till I was 18, I went in the Navy for 4 years, and I was gone 6 years, and anyway, as soon as I got home, I bought 10 acres of land when I was 25 years old, and I built me a house by hand, and started growing a garden.
Huh.
And there's an old neighbor I grew up with a pair of mules. My dad had 2 old gray mules. And
Hey, you remember their names?
Pete and Ellick was the name of, when I was pretty wild, and of course we'd ride them like horses. We'd whip and beat them, and back then there wasn't no saddle. We didn't have no saddle, but we knew how to hang on, you know what I mean? We'd make them gallop and...
a mule?
Yeah, they could go.
Huh.
They could do what a horse could do.
You ever take a girl out on a date on a mule?
No, we did go.
Take her out dancing?
Well, the only thing we ever done, went on some hay rides one time, and had this girl, and I was after her a little bit, but she was cool toward me, so.
I think it was the mule she didn't like. So you've gardened all your life?
Oh, yeah.
Other than when you were gone in the Navy?
Yeah.
You still garden?
Well,
I know the answer to that.
Every year, from 1965 till today, I've had a garden every year.
Wow.
As busy as I ever got in business, I was in electrical business. I always had a garden. And a pretty big garden. We actually grew enough food, like when I was growing up, we could have lived off of that food there.
Yeah, you had said something on one of the other episodes, I remember, about your mom or your dad, whoever, about the only thing they would go to the general store like this, country store, was to get sugar or flour maybe or something.
Yeah, we did buy flour. Back then, my dad would buy a 25-pound bag of Martha White flour.
Yeah, my grandpa went to a general store like this one time. He looked around, he said, I'll take a 5-pound sack of flour, a 5-pound sack of sugar, a 5-pound sack of coffee, and take a 5-pound sack of Jawea. We growing up, now let's see, I'm 62 and you're 87. I failed math. How much older are you? You're 15 years older than me, something like that. But even with us growing up in Happy Valley, North Carolina in the 70s and 80s, we had a garden every year. We had a 180-acre farm there, and I'm just going to, not necessarily in order, but on our farm, we had a big produce garden with everything you'd expect: beans, tomatoes, corn, okra, peppers. We had an apple orchard. We had peach trees, apple trees, grapes, blueberries. We had 2 ponds on our property. One was full of bass and bluegill. The other one up in the woods was full of rainbow trout. So we had fresh fish all the time. We made molasses every year. We grew the sugar cane in partnership with our neighbor Hoy and Bertha Moretz. God bless them. I learned a lot from Hoy and Moretz. Some of you from Happy Valley remember Hoy and Bertha. We had honeybees and made honey. We tapped maple trees and made maple syrup. Hoy had a smokehouse, and we did, like I heard you talking on one of the episodes about slaughtering hogs every year. And we made ham, we made bacon, we had pork chops, we had, all that, and smoked the hams, and we did sugar cured hams too. So my mom
basically lived the same way we did.
Yeah, my mom canned and put up food, and the only thing that she would go to the store to get would be sugar. And we had honey and molasses that you could use and substitute that, or to get flour. And we made flour. We grew buckwheat.
Did you?
Made buckwheat flour. And you and I have talked about this. I've shared the Indian corn with you, that heirloom Indian corn. And my dad, we grew sweet corn and too, but he grew for every year growing up that I can remember. Besides the buckwheat, he would grow a big patch of heirloom Indian corn. And you talk about good hearty cornmeal, and that's what he would grow it for. Some for decorations, for fall decoration, but 90% of it my mom would grind into cornmeal. And you talk about good cornbread or good hush puppies, that Indian corn. And while we're talking about that, and you and I have talked about it, I've given you ears to that. And I want my listeners to think a minute, our listeners, 1 ear of corn and I give them away as gifts. I've given them to you, and I give them to people because I grow it every year and save seed from it. 1 ear of corn has over 200 seeds on it. So if I give you an ear of corn and you've got a little patch of dirt, and you take that 1 ear of corn, you're going to get a minimum, if you plant it good and take care of it, you're going to get 200 ears of corn from me giving you 1 ear of corn. Imagine if you had more dirt and more land next year, if you took 200 seeds from 1 ear of corn, or for each one, and planted. It's just amazing and exponential what you can get from that. We would save seed every year too. We'd take about 1/10 of the green beans, the Indian corn, different things pumpkin seeds, cucumber seeds, and dry them, and then have seed to plant next year. We weren't going to the store to buy seed. We had our own seed every year.
Yeah, I've saved a lot of seed. I've got blue corn, yellow corn, and white corn that are heirloom. It's been around.
Yeah, and some of our listeners, if you're getting into gardening, and they should get into gardening, shouldn't they? Get you a little patch there, take your flower beds, your yard, and plow up part of it and plant some seeds in it. We're in trouble in the world with our supply chain is breaking down, and it's going to be harder and harder, I'm afraid, to get food. You need to start growing food, and it's easier than you think. We plow up. Debbie and I, several times here in Nashville, lived in the city. I had to garden. I had to get my hands dirty. I'd go out there in the little flower bed and plant tomatoes and peppers and cucumbers and some basil. But you and I understand this. You just talked about that heirloom white corn, yellow corn, and everything. To our listeners out there, and if you're starting to garden, of course, you can get on the internet and learn all this. Make sure you get heirloom seeds and not GMO seeds, because they won't grow or reproduce. And you can get them even at Lowe's Hardware, has a whole section of heirloom seeds, or you can order them online. Make sure you get heirloom seeds that are not genetically modified if you want to produce seeds for the next year.
They're trying to, used to be Montana, they want to control the seed industry.
Yeah.
And they had the wheat, had the corn, and I don't know what else.
Soybeans.
Of course, we grew up saving all our seed. Even squash and cucumbers, tomatoes, anything that would produce a seed, we had to have it for the next year.
Right.
Had to be very careful that we didn't lose. Of course, everybody back then had gardens and farms, and it was easy to, of course, you could buy seed. But back, we were, people called us a little bit backward because we come out of Jackson County, and it was, especially up in Jackson County back in the 40s and 50s, they didn't hardly get out of, my dad, he didn't even come out of Jackson County until he was like 30 years old, and he went to Dayton, Ohio. Of course, that's another story. After he lost his job up in Dayton, he had to come back to the farm, start farming, start gardening, and during the you know, when the crash of 29, he made it just fine because they were just living off the land,
Right.
you know.
I wanted to go back while we're talking about seeds still and talk. This is another thing I found out the hard way. I was like you, I love to keep seeds. Like Debbie will grow a pumpkin and she'll cut it or have me, I'm machete it for her into chunks. And she's throwing the seeds in the trash can. I'm like, no, get those back out. And I've got a sunroom on the front of my house and I built shelves on it, and I'll get one of her bread trays, a cookie pan or whatever, and spread those seeds out and set them there in the sun. 4 or 5 days, they're as dry as can be and ready to be put in a bag in the basement for next year. So she's buying cantaloupes and honeydew melons and stuff. And this a couple years, and I finally found out what was wrong. And same thing. And she's learned now. She doesn't throw out any seeds. She get a cantaloupe from the store and cut it open, save those seeds, and so I can go dry them. And then next year I was planting them, and they wouldn't grow. And I planted the honeydews, and they wouldn't grow. And I did a little bit of research getting back. There's a sticker on them if you go to Kroger or Walmart, and it'll say product of Mexico. Or it'll say product of California or somewhere in the States. If it came from outside the United States, the USDA requires that it goes through this ultraviolet treatment before it comes across the border, and it kills the germ in the seed, and the seed won't grow. And I figured it out. I thought I was doing something wrong with my dirt. Why won't none of these seeds germinate? And it was because they were cantaloupes from Mexico that came through the ultraviolet or treatment center at the border, and it killed the germ in the seeds. So that's a little life hack. If you buy a cantaloupe and you want to save the seeds to dry and plant next year, look for the little sticker on the cantaloupe, and it'll say product of Mexico, product of California. If it's out of the country, you're not going to have any luck growing.
I didn't know that.
I didn't either.
I've actually used to go to Honduras a lot, and I would bring seed back sometimes. You're not supposed to.
Yeah.
But if you brought it back for food, you could come across the border. But if you say, I'm going to plant this, then they would take it away from you and throw it in the trash.
Yeah.
You know, I had that to happen a time or two. But I still got red beans that come out of Central America, you know, that they still grow today, heirloom.
Yeah.
You know.
Another little life hack, I guess, for you that I would recommend to you, and I know you understand this, if you have limited garden space, and you can find all this out, this is another smart thing I learned or try to do. If you got a limited amount of dirt, you don't want to use up your little small piece of thing to plant a watermelon or a cantaloupe or even pumpkins that are going to run a long vine and take a lot of water to grow and take up all your space. My thing that I do every year, if I've got a small space, I always grow green beans, and I'll just use that as an example because they keep producing all season long. They don't just put out 2 green beans and quit. So I'm using that precious space to produce something. If I plant an ear of corn there, and I do plant corn, but if you have a small space, you're going to get 1 ear of corn for all that space.
Well, you know, back to the corn, you're talking how many kernels within the ear of corn. But some of the corn that my uncle used to raise, you know, the white prolific, it would have 746 grains of corn.
Wow.
In the...
On 1 ear.
Yeah.
Okra is another one that some people don't like okra. I love fried okra, and Debbie makes a mean cast iron skillet, chunked up potatoes and cornmeal and bacon. The okra puts out all season long. So the space is producing something all season long.
I'll tell you something else about okra. Eat it raw.
Yeah.
Go through the garden, you know, eat it, and something else. Corn.
I love sweet corn.
Just eat it right off the cob. Yes, you don't have to boil it.
No, it's better that way.
You don't have to fry it or do nothing.
I love it that way. And green beans, I'll be eating them while I'm picking them. I'll be eating an ear of corn, a tomato off the vine. Yeah, it's good like that. We
used to rent land. My dad would, he's like a sharecropper. We had a farm, but he would borrow the neighbor's field or, you know, cutting hay, you know, sometimes we'd cut hay and we'd take so much, the neighbor would take so much, you know. We pretty much lived off the land.
Check it out, Google it. It's scientifically proven that getting your feet in the dirt or your hands in the dirt, a lot of you know the term earthing, is incredibly healing to the body. Physically, emotionally,
didn't know that.
psychologically. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you get out and get in the dirt, it's like I got to get my hands in the dirt. I got to get my feet in the dirt. Debbie and I will go up in the garden. I got a couple chairs up there, and she'll get home from work, or I'll come in. We'll go up and sit in the garden and take our shoes off and put our feet in the dirt. And we're hearing the birds singing and seeing the sunset, and it's healing. Plant a garden and get in it.
The other day I was planting some Irish potatoes. I take a potato and cut the eyes out of it, but I had to get on my knees, because when I throw that little eye down there, it would flip the wrong side up or down. And I had to turn it over and put some dirt on it, and
You talked in one episode about, I remember you talking about a creek and you boys sliding down a red mud bank naked into the creek. That's good earthing right there. And some of you don't do this if you live in the city, but if you live out, was he going to have your neighbors? Man, get naked and get in the garden. If it's just you and your wife.
There's a guy, John Jenkins, had 500 acres across the road from us. And he had these cattle, but he had this big old red bull. And we'd be walking to the creek, and we'd skirt around that red bull. If a red bull seen us, he would chase us, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we was always scared of the red bull,
We had our neighbor, Junior White, on that 180-acre farm I grew up on. The neighboring farm was a Holstein dairy farm with maybe 200 head of Holstein milk cows. Multiple times over my childhood, the cows would get out. Fence would break. And guess where they headed every time? Every time. To our garden. We'd get up one morning, look out there, and we'd done all this work for months to grow, and there's a herd of cows out, and they're just decimating the corn. The pumpkins, stomping it all and running it all. Anyway, that's just a funny little thing. I remember my dad being so upset, and he would be. He didn't go crazy on Junior White or anything, but deer are awful bad where I live right now. I'm having trouble with the deer getting in my garden.
Well, we had trouble with groundhogs.
Yeah.
And one year my dad, he said, I want y'all to plant 1,000 tomato plants.
1,000?
I mean,
1,000.
For two boys, that's quite a little job. You know what I mean?
Good gracious, yeah.
And we had like 2 acres of cantaloupes at the same time. That was two things. He wanted to make money. Anyway, we had them growing real good, and tomatoes was starting to put on. We had a hailstorm, and it beat them tomatoes, and we didn't get one tomato off the hole. But the cantaloupes, it beat the leaves off, and they come alive and grew back out, and we sold hundreds and hundreds of cantaloupes.
Wow.
It was a dime and a quarter for the big one. You know what I mean?
That made me think of this story. I got so mad at my chickens. You ever been mad at a chicken? Even though it was laying eggs, we had a garden up in Indiana, Rochester, Indiana. And I had planted 2 big long rows of red bell peppers. And I would wait, they start green and they get bigger and bigger and turn yellow or red or whatever. And I also had a nice flock of chickens, which we had a lot off and on, laying eggs and kill some of the older birds to eat. And I'd let them free range carefully through the garden. And I had some of it fenced off, where they couldn't get to the tomatoes because they'll pick them, eat them right off of there. But the peppers weren't in the fenced-in area of the garden, and so I let the chickens out one evening just before dark. I had a pen for them and watched them to see, and I was ready to run them off. And I knew in 30 minutes when it was dark they'd go back anyway, and I stayed out there to see if they'd mess with those peppers. And Paul, they were right at all being that red. I don't know, there must have been 100 peppers on these 2 long rows. Beautiful, big, beautiful tomatoes, peppers. And they did all right. I did the same thing the next night. Just before dark, I let them out and then go pick bugs and grass and stuff. I'm watching them, and they don't mess with the peppers. And they went back in, I shut their pen. The next evening, I had to be out late for something, and Debbie let the chickens out. And I get home that evening, and I'd always survey the chickens, make sure they're up, and kind of survey the garden and, just make my rounds. And I'm telling you, there was not one bell pepper, not a piece of one on those whole 2 rows.
They got to eat and like them.
Well, I thought And it was dark, so I couldn't see the little dribbles and stuff on the ground. All I could see that there was 100 of them, not one pepper left. And I go in the house, I said, "Who picked my peppers?" And Debbie's like, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Who picked my red peppers?" So, "I don't know what you're talking about." "Gracie, did y'all pick my David, did y'all pick my..." "What are you talking about?" I go back out there to the flashlight and chicken footprints and little dribbles and things. And this is the only, I was so mad, I was ready to kill every one of those chickens except they're laying eggs. I interrupt this program. Paul and I thought while we were talking about bell peppers, we'd go out to his garden and talk about something important I learned about peppers a long time ago. And I didn't kill the chickens, by the way. Let's go out to Paul's garden, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
Look at that, Paul.
Yeah, I'm telling you.
Nice. Man, there's a big one right here. Look at that.
Whatever you do, don't steal my watermelon.
Yeah.
Okay?
Look at that.
Okay, I planted these in the watermelon feast.
Look at that.
Yeah.
I'm going to carve my initials in it. You got bell peppers right here, Paul, coming on. Look at that. Something most people don't know about bell peppers. Everybody's seen green bell peppers and certainly red and yellow bell peppers. All of those, including the red bell pepper and the yellow bell pepper, are green first. All of them are green, and you can't tell till it starts getting to maturity. It'll start turning yellow or start turning red. And some people will pick them and think that's a green pepper and don't realize that it's actually a red pepper or yellow pepper that's not ready yet. And you can eat them, but it's got a more bitter taste, and they're a lot sweeter if you let them grow to fullness. I forget what this is. I'm gonna look it up. These things will eat this plant up, and it's not a monarch. It's a maybe a viceroy. I'll look it up. Remember, got a little horn on the back of it. You're very busy eating. I hate to take you off of this pepper plant, but I don't think Paul wants you on here. But I'm gonna have mercy on you, little buddy, and leave you there so you can become a beautiful butterfly. All right, back to the bad chicken story. Good story, bad chickens. For the next probably 10 days, 2 weeks, the eggs, when I started cracking them open 3 or 4 days later after those peppers went through them, the yolks were almost that color. They weren't yellow, they weren't orange, they were red.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, at least I'm getting reconstituted pepper through the eggs, pepper eggs. Anyway, you got to be careful with things like that, but start gardening, man.
There's a man, he knew I was a gardener and, liked to fool with animals and things. He gave me 12 chickens one time. And I built a chicken house for the chicken. And, them chickens, when they were growing, one of them poked his head up like that. I said, why is he different? Turned out there was 11 hens and 1 rooster. And that rooster, he thought he was a protector of the chicken. And he would, when I would go up to where the chickens were at, he would fly out and try to attack me. And he hit me in the head one time. He could have plucked my eye out.
With that spur.
And he would have tried to. And I told Joanne, I said, this is his last day on earth. So
Get the soup pot
I
out.
slaughtered him, and I said, Joanne, get a pot ready. We're going to cook us a big old rooster, But I had to get rid of him because he liked to knock my eye out, you know what I mean?
You make a good soup.
Yeah. But how did that rooster, as they were growing up, how did he know he was the rooster and he was in charge of the hen house?
Because God made it that way.
Yeah.
With that, we got to close. Paul, I hate to close. It's been great today. I love talking about this. We're so thankful, as we always say, that you all would tune in and take time to listen. I hope something Paul and I have shared with you inspires you to get out in the dirt and grow a garden. If you have questions, you can write to us and we'll try to answer them. As we always say, if there's something you want to hear us talk about, please let us know in the comments. God bless you all. Talk to you soon. You've been watching We Need to Talk, filmed live at Scotts Hollow Mercantile in Hermitage, Tennessee, with your host, Paul Odom, and yours truly, Papa John. Join us again next week and we'll get after it again. Yep, we need to talk. Daddy's